Some people leave the city because they have failed. But some people leave because they have finally heard their soul crying for rescue. Some people go back home because life has defeated them. But some people go back home because the place they once ran from has become the place where God will rebuild them. This is the story of a woman named Rose. A woman who left the city with one suitcase, a broken heart, and the shame of starting over. People thought her life had ended. They said she had wasted her education. They said the city had swallowed her and spat her out. They said she was going back to the village because she could not survive where serious people succeed. But what they did not know was this. Sometimes the road that looks like defeat is actually the road back to yourself. And sometimes the city you are afraid to leave is the very place that has been quietly killing you. Rose grew up in a small village where mornings began with the sound of roosters, sweeping brooms, and women calling children to prepare for school. Her mother sold vegetables at the roadside market. Her father had died when Rose was still young, so from an early age, Rose understood struggle. She knew what it meant to go to school with torn shoes. She knew what it meant to pretend she was not hungry. She knew what it meant to watch other children open lunchboxes while she drank water and waited for evening. But Rose was bright, very bright. Teachers loved her because she did not waste chances. Even when she had no proper lamp at home, she studied near the kitchen fire. Even when rain entered their small house, she lifted her books from the floor and kept reading. Her mother used to look at her and say, "My daughter, one day you will leave this place. You will work in the city. You will wear clean shoes. You will not suffer the way I suffered." And Rose believed her. The city became a dream before it became a place. In Rose's mind, the city meant freedom. It meant tall buildings, good clothes, respect, a salary, a life where nobody would look at her and see poverty first. So when Rose finished college and got a job in Nairobi as an office assistant for a logistics company, the whole village celebrated. Her mother cried. Neighbors came to shake her hand. Aunties said, "Do not forget us when you become rich." Children looked at her like she had entered another world. And Rose left home carrying 2 bags, a Bible, a few clothes, and every expectation her family had placed on her shoulders. When she arrived in the city, everything felt big. The buildings, the roads, the buses, the crowds, even the loneliness felt big. But Rose did not complain. She rented a small bedsitter in a crowded estate where water came only 3 days a week and electricity disappeared without warning. Still, she was proud. The room was small, but it was hers. The mattress was thin, but she had bought it herself. The salary was low, but it came with her name on the payslip. Every morning, she woke up at 5. She boiled tea on a small gas stove. She wore her neat blouse, carried her handbag, and joined other workers walking quickly toward the bus stop. At the office, she worked hard. She answered calls, filed documents, prepared tea for visitors, carried files from one department to another. Sometimes people ignored her. Sometimes managers spoke to her as if she had no dreams of her own. But Rose kept smiling. She told herself, "This is just the beginning." And for a while, life seemed to move forward. She sent money home every month. Not much, but enough for her mother to buy medicine, pay small debts, and keep the younger siblings in school. Whenever Rose visited the village during December, people treated her differently. They noticed her handbag, her shoes, her phone, her city way of speaking. Some admired her, some envied her, some exaggerated her success. They said, "Rose is doing very well in Nairobi." Rose smiled when they said that. But inside, she knew the truth. The city had not made her rich. It had only taught her how to hide struggle behind clean clothes. Her rent took half her salary. Transport took another part. Food prices kept rising. Her siblings needed school fees. Her mother needed support. By the end of each month, Rose was borrowing from mobile loans just to survive until payday. Still, she kept going. because going back home felt like shame. Then she met Brian. Brian worked in sales for the same company. He was confident, well-dressed, and charming. He knew how to make people laugh. He knew how to speak about dreams. He told Rose she was different. He said, "You are not like these other girls. You are hardworking. You understand life." Rose liked that. For once, someone in the city saw more than her job title. Brian took her to small restaurants. He called her during lunch breaks. He sent good morning messages. He told her they would build a future together. And because Rose was tired of carrying life alone, she allowed herself to believe him. At first, Brian was kind. Then, slowly, he started changing. He asked her for money, small amounts at first, then bigger amounts. He said he had business ideas. He said he would pay her back. He said couples should support each other. Rose gave him money because she believed love required sacrifice. When she hesitated, he made her feel guilty. "You do not trust me? You think I am using you? I thought we were building together." Those words trapped her. Rose knew what it meant to support a dream. She had watched her mother sacrifice for everyone. So she sacrificed too. She took loans to help Brian. She delayed buying things for herself. She sent less money home and told her mother things were difficult at work. But Brian's promises remained promises. He was always about to change, always about to pay back, always about to start something big. Then one day, Rose saw him at a mall with another woman, not walking like friends, walking like people with secrets. The woman held his arm. Brian laughed in the relaxed way he used to laugh with Rose before everything became excuses. Rose stood there with a shopping bag containing cheap groceries and felt the city noise disappear around her. Brian saw her. For a second, his face changed, then he looked away, as if Rose was nobody, as if the woman who had lent him money, loved him, prayed for him, and waited for him was suddenly a stranger. Later that night, he called her, not to apologize, to accuse her. "Why were you following me?" Rose could not believe it. "Following you? Yes. You embarrass me." Rose sat on the edge of her bed. Her voice shook. "Brian, who was she?" He sighed like she was irritating him. "You women are always insecure." That night, something broke. But Rose still did not leave immediately. That is the painful truth about many wounded hearts. They do not walk away the first time they are disrespected. They wait. They explain. They hope the person who hurt them will suddenly remember how to love them properly. Rose waited for an apology that never came. Instead, Brian became cold. Then distant. Then gone. He stopped picking calls. He stopped replying messages. And when Rose finally found courage to ask him for the money he owed, he laughed. "Rose, stop behaving like I married you. I will pay when I can." She stared at the message for a long time, not because of the money alone, but because of the disrespect. She had given him from her lack, and he was treating her sacrifice like a small inconvenience. Still, Rose had no time to fall apart. Because life in the city does not pause when your heart is broken. Bills continued, rent continued, loans continued, work continued. Then the company began struggling. At first, there were whispers, delayed salaries, meetings behind closed doors, managers looking tense. Then, one Friday afternoon, staff were called into the boardroom. The director stood in front of them with a serious face and said the company was restructuring. Rose heard words like difficult decision, economic pressure, and staff reduction. Then she received a letter. Her position had been terminated. Just like that. 5 years in the city folded into one envelope. Rose sat at her desk, staring at the paper. Her hands were cold. Her body felt empty. She thought about rent, loans, her mother, her siblings, her food, her future. Her colleagues came to hug her, but their comfort felt far away. That evening, she packed her few office items into a small bag. A mug, a notebook, 2 pence, a photo of her mother. She walked out of the office building and stood on the pavement as people rushed past her. The city did not notice her pain. Cars moved, people laughed, buses shouted for passengers, streetlights came on, and Rose realized something frightening. You can give years of your life to a city, and when you break, it will continue breathing as if you were never there. The next 2 months were the hardest of her life. She looked for work everywhere: receptionist jobs, sales jobs, assistant jobs, cleaner jobs, anything honest. Sometimes she walked into offices and left her CV at front desks where nobody looked at her twice. Sometimes employers said she was overqualified. Sometimes they said she was not experienced enough. Sometimes they asked if she could work without pay first. At night, she returned to her room exhausted, removed her shoes, and cried silently, not because she was lazy, not because she did not want to try, but because trying and failing daily can make even a strong person feel small. Soon, rent was due. Then, overdue. The landlord started calling. Then knocking, then shouting outside her door. "Rose, this is not charity. Pay or leave," neighbors heard. Rose stayed inside, holding her breath like silence could protect her dignity. One afternoon, she opened her phone and saw messages from mobile lenders. Warnings, penalties, threats. Her chest became tight. She sat on the floor and whispered, "God, I cannot breathe." That was the first time the thought came clearly. Go home. At first, she resisted it. Home? After all these years? After everyone believed she was doing well? After her mother had told people her daughter worked in Nairobi? How would she explain that she had no job, no savings, no relationship, and no plan? How would she face the people who had used her as an example? She imagined the whispers. City life defeated her. She came back with nothing. Education did not help her. She should have married. She became proud, and now she is back. The shame felt heavier than her suitcase. But one night, after eating plain tea and bread for dinner, Rose looked around her small room and understood the truth. She was not staying in the city because she was strong. She was staying because she was afraid of what people would say, and fear of people had become more powerful than her desire to live. The next morning, she called her mother. When her mother answered, Rose tried to sound normal. "Mama." "Yes, my daughter." There was a pause. Then Rose broke. She cried like a child. Not the soft crying people do when they still want to look strong. She cried from the stomach, the kind of crying that carries months of pretending. Her mother did not interrupt. She waited. Then she said, "Come home." Rose wiped her tears. "Mama, I have failed." Her mother said, "No, you are tired. There is a difference." Those words saved her. A week later, Rose packed her life into one suitcase and one black bag. She sold her small gas cooker, sold her plastic chairs, gave away some clothes, paid part of what she owed the landlord, and promised to pay the rest later. Then she boarded a bus home. As the city disappeared behind her, Rose looked out of the window and cried quietly. Not because she wanted to go back, but because she was grieving the woman she had tried so hard to be. The woman who smiled in office corridors. The woman who sent money home even when she had nothing. The woman who stayed in a relationship that drained her because she was afraid to be alone. The woman who thought leaving the city meant losing herself. By the time the bus reached her hometown, the sun was setting. Her mother was waiting at the stage, older, smaller, but still strong. When Rose stepped down, her mother hugged her for a long time. No questions, no lecture, no shame. Just arms. And sometimes, after the world has beaten you badly, arms are enough to begin healing. But the village was not gentle. By the second day, people knew Rose had returned. Women at the market lowered their voices when she passed. Old classmates asked questions with fake concern. "So you are back for a short visit? Did your company transfer you? Where is your husband?" Rose smiled politely, but every question touched a wound. Her aunt came one evening and said, "My daughter, city life is not for everyone. At least you tried." Rose wanted to disappear, but her mother later told her, "Do not answer every voice. Some people only speak because silence makes them uncomfortable." For the first few weeks, Rose did nothing. She woke up early out of habit, then remembered she had nowhere to go. She helped her mother at the market. She washed clothes, cooked, sat under a mango tree, watched village life move slowly. At first, the quiet felt like punishment. In the city, noise had hidden her pain. At home, silence exposed everything. Her disappointment, her debt, her loneliness, her fear. But slowly, the quiet began to heal her. She started sleeping properly, eating better, breathing deeper. One morning, while helping her mother arrange vegetables at the market, Rose noticed something. Many women were working hard, but they did not know whether they were making profit. A woman selling tomatoes mixed business money with school fees. A shopkeeper sold on credit but kept no records. A young mother who cooked chapati by the roadside did not know how much flour she used per day. A tailor was always busy but always broke. Rose began asking questions. How much do you buy this for? How much do you sell? How many customers per day? Do you write debts down? Most of them laughed. My daughter, we keep it in the head. But Rose knew the head forgets what hunger remembers. One day, a woman named Wanjiku, who owned a small tea kiosk, complained that her business was cursed. I sell every day, but money disappears. Rose asked if she could look at her numbers. Wanjiku laughed. What numbers? I only know I wake up tired and sleep tired. Rose took an old exercise book and began writing. Tea leaves, sugar, milk, charcoal, bread, mandazi, daily sales, debts, wastage. After 3 days, Rose showed Wanjiku something shocking. She was giving too much credit to customers who never paid. She was also underpricing tea whenever milk prices increased. Wanjiku stared at the book. So the business is not cursed? Rose smiled. No, it is just leaking. That sentence spread. Soon, another woman asked Rose to help her. Then another. Then a small shop owner. Rose started charging very little. At first, people paid her with vegetables, eggs, or a small amount of cash. She did not mind. For the first time in months, she felt useful again. Not because a company hired her, not because a man praised her, not because the city approved her, but because her mind still worked. Her experience still mattered. Her pain had not erased her ability. One evening, Rose sat with her mother outside the house. The sky was orange, smoke rose from nearby kitchens. Children played on the dusty road. Her mother looked at her and said, "You are coming back to yourself." Rose smiled softly. "I thought I came home because I had nothing," her mother said. "Maybe you came home so you could see what was still inside you." That night, Rose could not sleep. But this time, it was not because of fear. It was because of an idea. What if she helped small village businesses with simple records? What if she trained women to know their profits? What if she created notebooks for kiosks, salons, tailors, vegetable sellers, and food vendors? What if she used the same city experience she thought had failed her to build something new at home? The next morning, she wrote a name on a piece of paper. Rose Business Care. It was simple, but it felt like a seed. She borrowed her mother's table and set it under a tree near the market. She printed a small poster at a cyber cafe. It said, "Simple business records, profit tracking, debt books, stock planning." Some people laughed. "Who will pay for that in the village? You think you are still in Nairobi? People here know how to sell without books." Rose heard them, but she did not stop. Because after you survive public shame, small laughter loses power. Her first official client was a salon owner, then a shopkeeper, then a small restaurant. Then a boda spare parts seller. Rose visited each business, sat with the owner, and helped them understand their money. She created simple books using columns. What came in? What went out? Who owed money? What stock was moving? What stock was wasting? How much profit remained? People started seeing results. A shopkeeper discovered one worker was stealing small amounts daily. A restaurant owner reduced food waste. A tailor stopped undercharging for school uniforms. A vegetable seller finally separated rent money from business money. Slowly, people stopped laughing. They started calling, "Rose, come and check my books. Rose, help my daughter with her salon. Rose, my husband opened a hardware. Can you arrange things?" For the first time in years, Rose earned money that did not come with fear. It was not a big amount, but it was clean. It was hers, and every coin told her, "You are not finished." Months passed. Rose paid small portions of her debts. She bought a second-hand laptop. She opened a small office behind the market, a room with one desk, 3 chairs, and a curtain that did not match the walls. To someone else, it looked small. To Rose, it looked like resurrection. She painted the door blue, put a plant near the entrance, placed her certificate on the wall. And for the first time, when people entered, they did not say, "This is the girl who came back from Nairobi." They said, "This is Rose. She helps businesses." That name healed something in her. One afternoon, Brian called. Rose looked at the number for a long time. Her hand did not shake. That surprised her. There was a time when his name on the screen could change her whole day. Now it was just a number. She answered. "Hello." Brian's voice came softly. "Rose, how are you?" "I am well." "I heard you left Nairobi?" "Yes." He paused. "I was sorry to hear about your job." Rose said nothing. He continued, "I have been thinking about you." Rose almost laughed, but she did not. Life has a strange way of bringing back people who disappeared when you were breaking. They often return when they hear you are standing again. Brian said, "Maybe we can talk. I miss what we had." Rose looked around her small office. The files, the desk, the plant, the women waiting outside for training. She remembered the loans, the lies, them all, the disrespect. Then she said, "Brian, what we had cost me too much." He sighed. "You are still angry?" "No, I am healed enough to tell the truth." He was quiet. Rose continued, "I do not hate you, but I will never again confuse being needed with being loved." Brian had no answer. She ended the call peacefully. No shouting, no tears, no long explanation. That was how Rose knew she had changed. Pain used to make her beg for closure. Healing taught her that sometimes closure is simply refusing to reopen a door that nearly destroyed you. A year later, Rose's business care had grown. She was training women every Saturday, not in expensive halls. Sometimes under tents, sometimes in church rooms, sometimes in the back of her office. She taught them how to price products, how to separate household money from business money, how to save during good weeks, how to avoid debt traps, how to keep records even with a small notebook. Women came from nearby villages, widows, single mothers, young wives, girls who had dropped out of college, older women who had been selling for years but never knew their profit. Rose told them, "You do not need to be in the city to build something meaningful. You need clarity, discipline, and courage." The women listened. Some cried, some laughed. Some said, "I wish I knew this earlier." And every time Rose stood before them, she remembered the day she arrived home with one suitcase and shame sitting on her shoulders. If someone had told her then that her pain would become a tool to help others, she would not have believed it. But life is like that. It can bury you and plant you at the same time. The difference is only revealed later. One December, Rose was invited to speak at a county women's event. She wore a simple green dress. Her mother sat in the front row, proud, very proud. As Rose stood at the podium, she saw faces looking at her with respect. Not pity, not gossip, respect. She took a deep breath and began. My name is Rose. I left the city with nothing but lessons. The room became quiet. She continued, for a long time, I thought returning home meant I had failed. But I later learned that failure is not starting over. Failure is staying where your spirit is dying because you are afraid of people's opinions. Her mother wiped tears. Rose continued, the city taught me skills. Pain taught me wisdom. Home gave me soil. And when I stopped mourning the life I lost, I started building the life that was waiting for me. People clapped. But Rose did not hear the clapping the way she used to imagine she would. When she was young, she wanted applause so people could prove she had become important. Now she understood something deeper. The greatest victory was not that people clapped. The greatest victory was that she no longer needed their approval to know her worth. Years later, people still talked about Rose. But the story changed. At first they said, she came back from Nairobi with nothing. Then they said, she is trying. Then they said, she is helping people. Then they said, she built something here. And finally they said, maybe leaving the city was not failure after all. Rose smiled whenever she heard that. Because she knew the truth. She did not leave the city because she was weak. She left because she wanted to live. She did not go home because her dream had died. She went home because her dream needed different soil. She did not start again because she had nothing. She started again because she finally realized she still had herself. And that was enough. So, if you are listening to this and life has forced you to begin again, do not be ashamed. Starting over is painful. But staying in a place that is destroying you is worse. Do not let people's opinions trap you in a life that is draining your soul. Do not let shame convince you that a new beginning is a funeral. Sometimes, a new beginning is a resurrection. Sometimes, losing the life you were trying to protect is how you find the life you were meant to build. Sometimes the road back home is not backward. Sometimes it is the road forward. Rose left the city with a broken heart. But she found peace in a place she once thought was too small for her dreams. And in the end, she learned this. A woman can lose a job and still have purpose. She can lose a relationship and still have love inside her. She can lose a city and still build a world. Because when a woman finally stops running from shame and starts walking toward herself, there is no place too small for her to rise again.